My cousin is 9. Quiet, kid, polite, always doing what's asked. But lately, there's this look in his eyes, like he's already tired of being here. Not the kind of tired a nap can fix. It's something deeper, like his soul's been carrying a weight he can't name. The other day, he said, "I don't like waking up. It's just the same day again." And I just stood there because what do you even say to a child who already sounds exhausted by life? Have you ever felt like that when you were young? That strange heaviness you couldn't explain. When everyone said you had a good life, but something inside still felt empty? Most adults call it being ungrateful. Dramatic. Just a phase. But psychology calls it something else. Emotional exhaustion in children. And it's not rare. It's just invisible. So if you've ever looked at a child and seen that quiet kind of sadness, or if you once were that child, this is for you. Because sometimes the tiredness we see in children isn't about rest. It's about what they've been forced to carry just to feel loved. This is the psychology of children who are tired of existing. This happens when their emotional output has exceeded their emotional input for too long, when they keep giving energy to survive, to please parents, to meet expectations, to avoid disappointing anyone but receive very little back in return. It's not always visible. On the outside, these children might look functional, getting good grades, doing chores, smiling when required. But inside, everything feels muted. Joy feels like a distant language they once knew how to speak, but can't remember anymore. What's fascinating is that this isn't just emotional, it's biological. The brain under prolonged stress begins to rewire itself for survival, even in childhood. It starts filtering experiences through the lens of fatigue. The reward systems slow down, dopamine responses weaken. And motivation, that spark that makes life feel meaningful, fades like a dimming light bulb. So when a child says, "I'm just tired," it's not laziness. It's their mind saying, "I've been carrying too much for too long." This is where psychology meets humanity. Because behind every tired child is a story, not of failure, but of effort. Children who are tired of existing are often the ones who've tried too hard to keep everything together. They're the peacemakers, the helpers, the ones who always try to make their parents happy, even when they have nothing left to give. They've learned how to survive in chaos, but never how to rest in peace. Subscribe if you believe children deserve to be children. Not emotional caretakers. Only people who think kids should toughen up will ignore this. Think about it. We live in a world that rewards productivity, not peace even for children. They're praised for perfect grades, but never for taking a quiet day to just be. They're celebrated for being mature for their age, but rarely for being allowed to be immature, messy, and young. So what happens? Children learn to equate worth with movement, with achievement, with being useful. And when they finally stop, they feel guilty, as if rest is a form of failure. This guilt is part of what keeps children trapped in quiet exhaustion. Their mind starts whispering, "You don't deserve rest until you've earned it." But that's the paradox. If they wait until they've earned rest, they'll never get it. Because in their world, there's always more homework to do, more expectations to meet, more ways to prove they're worthy of love. And so they keep running even when they've forgotten why they started. One of the most painful truths is this: being tired of existing doesn't mean a child is weak. It often means they've been strong for too long. They've carried emotions they never processed, responsibilities they never asked for, expectations that no one could possibly meet. And after years of pretending that weight doesn't matter, their spirit begins to whisper, "I can't keep doing this." There's a psychological term called anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. It's not about sadness, it's about emptiness. Imagine a child living in grayscale, where even good things feel neutral. That's what happens when their brain goes into self-preservation mode. It stops reaching for joy because it's learned that joy is unreliable. it's safer to expect nothing than to be disappointed again. Children in this state often start pulling away, not because they want to, but because social energy becomes too expensive. Even talking to friends feels like lifting a mountain. They might stop participating in activities, stay silent at the dinner table, or spend more time in their room. Not because they hate their family, but because their nervous system can't handle one more emotional demand. But here's the thing most people misunderstand. These children aren't giving up. They're trying to protect themselves. When the world becomes too loud, isolation feels like a form of safety. It's like finding shelter in a storm. And even though the silence can feel empty, at least it doesn't hurt. This kind of fatigue is cumulative. It builds up from years of emotional suppression. Every "I'm fine" they said when they weren't. Every time they smiled instead of cried. Every time they stayed quiet to avoid burdening their parents. Each of those moments adds up until one day they can't fake energy anymore. That's when adults start noticing small signs. The child who used to love music now plays it rarely. Laughter feels forced. Time feels slower. They look around and wonder when life stopped feeling like life. There's another layer to this too, meaning fatigue in childhood. When children lose touch with what gives their life purpose, everything starts to feel heavy. It's not that they hate their existence, it's that they can't find a reason to keep repeating it. Wake up, go to school, come home to tension, do homework, go to bed, repeat. Days blur together, and slowly they start asking questions like, what's the point? But the question itself isn't hopeless. It's a sign of awakening. Because when a child's soul asks, what's the point? It's really saying, I need a reason to stay. Share this if you've ever seen a child lose their spark. Subscribe if you believe children's emotional exhaustion is real. Only people who think kids are just being dramatic will ignore this. This moment, as bleak as it feels, is often where understanding begins. Because tiredness, in its deepest form, is a signal. A message from the child's subconscious saying something in their life is no longer safe, no longer aligned with who they need to be. And that realization, while painful, can also be clarifying for the adults who care. It means there's something that needs to change. Maybe it's the pressure at home. Maybe it's the way love is being communicated. Maybe it's the unspoken family dysfunction. One of the most profound discoveries in psychology is that meaning is medicine, even for children. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived concentration camps during World War II, wrote that humans can endure almost anyhow if they have a why. Children who rediscover their why, their reason to keep going, often find their energy returning. Not instantly, but gradually. The tiredness begins to shift from despair to direction. It's the difference between I'm exhausted because nothing matters, and I'm exhausted because I'm trying to survive something I shouldn't have to. So maybe the goal isn't to erase the tiredness in these children. Maybe it's to listen to it. To treat it as a messenger instead of a problem to fix, because somewhere inside that exhaustion is a voice whispering, something here is hurting me. Maybe it's a parent's unhealed trauma spilling onto them. Maybe it's a family dynamic that demands they perform perfection. Maybe it's a version of childhood that survived but no longer allows them to thrive. And if a child is feeling that pull, that quiet ache that says there has to be more than this, they're not broken, they're aware. There's a strange beauty in that. Because children who've known the weight of emotional exhaustion often become the most compassionate souls you'll ever meet. They understand pain without words. They sense when others are struggling, even behind smiles. They learn to value honesty above everything because they've learned that pretending doesn't heal. If you're an adult listening to this and something resonates, whether from your own childhood or from a child in your life, remember this. These children are not lazy. They are not attention-seeking. They are not going through a phase. They're simply human beings in a world that often forgets children need more than food and shelter. They need emotional safety. They need to be seen without having to perform. They need to know their worth isn't tied to their usefulness. You don't need to fix everything at once. You don't need to force them to be happy or fake energy. All you need to do just for now is to stop dismissing their tiredness and start hearing what it's trying to tell you. Because sometimes a child being tired of existing isn't a symptom of weakness. It's a symptom of an environment that's asked too much of them for too long. And that's not their fault. That's on us. You see, the moment you admit that a child in your life is tired of existing, something shifts. For the first time, you're being honest. Not with others, but with yourself. And that honesty, though it feels heavy, is actually the beginning of change. Because until you name their fatigue, you'll keep trying to fix it with distractions, new activities, new rewards, new rules, anything that feels like progress. But what they're really craving isn't more structure. It's safety, emotional safety. And safety doesn't always come from grand gestures or therapy sessions. Sometimes it's found in the smallest, quietest moments. Sitting with them without needing to fix them. Listening without offering solutions. Letting them cry without saying, "It's not that bad." It's in those moments that their nervous system finally says, "Thank you, I can breathe here." Because rest is not laziness, it's repair. Share this with a parent who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you believe children deserve emotional rest. Only people who think tough love fixes everything will ignore this. Now let's talk about the signal beneath the silence. When children start to feel safe enough to rest not just physically, but emotionally, they begin to notice how much of their life has been driven by survival. Every action, every smile, every attempt to be good, it's all been about avoiding pain rather than experiencing peace. And that's understandable. Their brain is wired that way. The human mind prioritizes safety above happiness, especially in childhood. That's why even when everything looks fine on the surface, good grades, extracurriculars, smiles and photos, a child can still feel hollow inside. Because safety without love, without genuine connection, eventually feels like a cage. Here's the truth. Most adults never say out loud, when a child is tired of existing, it's not because they want to give up. It's because they want something real to live for. They want a reason that makes waking up feel worth it again. A reason that's bigger than grades or parental approval. And the beautiful thing is that reason doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be honest. In psychology, there's a concept called existential fatigue in childhood. It's when a child's soul grows weary from living without feeling truly seen. Not because their life is objectively bad, but because it's emotionally empty. They can have comfort, stability, even success. But if it's not accompanied by genuine love and acceptance, it will drain them. Children aren't meant to simply survive routines. They're meant to feel safe in them. That's why children who go through this kind of emptiness often start questioning everything. Their worth, their place in the family, whether anyone would notice if they just stopped trying. Not because they're dramatic, but because their soul is tired of pretending. It's saying, this version of life no longer feels bearable. And that realization, though painful, is important because it's the first step toward awareness for them and hopefully for the adults around them. Comment, "I see you," if you were this child and no one noticed. Hit like. If you believe seeing a child's pain is the first step to healing, only people in denial about childhood suffering will scroll past. Here's something most people overlook. A child's energy doesn't just come from sleep or nutrition. It comes from emotional alignment. When they feel loved for who they are, not what they do, they feel light. When they feel judged or conditional, even small tasks feel impossible. That's why a child can spend hours playing something they love and feel energized, but 5 minutes doing something they're forced into and feel destroyed. The soul directs the body, even in children. So what can adults do when a child feels this tired? The answer isn't to overhaul their schedule overnight or sign them up for more therapy. It's to begin small acts of emotional honesty. Start noticing what drains them. Start noticing what lights them up, even a little. Maybe it's certain family dynamics. Maybe it's the way love is being expressed or not expressed. Maybe it's the pressure to be perfect, to be easy, to never need anything. Once you see those patterns, you can begin to release them. Not in a dramatic way, but gently. Because healing isn't a performance. It's a quiet returning. Somewhere along the way, adults start realizing that children aren't asking to be perfect. It's us who've been demanding that. We've built impossible standards out of fear. Fear that if they rest, they'll fall behind. But behind what? Behind who? No child is meant to compete with the world at age 8, 10, 12. They're meant to feel safe, curious, and loved. And the moment adults stop comparing their child's timeline to others, they begin to see that peace was never behind achievement. It was always behind acceptance. There's something powerful that happens when a child is allowed to be tired without shame. It transforms the way they see themselves. Instead of feeling broken, they start to feel human. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" they start to understand, something around me isn't safe. And slowly, that understanding becomes the bridge back to life. Children start rediscovering wonder when they're given permission to feel. Not the loud, performative kind, but the subtle kind. The quiet beauty of small things. The way sunlight spills across their room in the morning. The smell of something baking. The way their favorite song makes them feel seen. These tiny anchors remind them that life doesn't have to be extraordinary to be meaningful. It just has to be felt. And feeling, ironically, is something children unlearn when they're forced to grow up too fast. They're taught to achieve, to comply, to stay quiet. But they're rarely taught to simply feel, to sit with sadness without being told to cheer up, to hold joy without fearing it will be taken away. Children who are tired of existing are often the ones who've lost touch with that raw emotional connection to life. They've become numb, not because they don't care, but because caring has hurt too much. The way back isn't through more control or more rules. It's through surrender, through allowing them to be children again. To cry without justification, to rest without guilt, to admit that maybe they don't have to have it all figured out right now. And that's okay, because sometimes the most courageous thing a child can do isn't to keep pushing forward. It's to stop, breathe, and let someone else hold them for once. One of the most profound studies in child psychology found that children who regularly experience awe moments, small, intentional experiences of wonder, report higher emotional resilience and lower rates of anxiety. So even when a child feels empty, seeking awe can help reawaken something inside them. It could be watching the stars together, listening to music that moves them, reading a story that mirrors their pain and shows them they're not alone. Because awe reconnects them with existence itself. It reminds them that they're still here, and that being here still matters. And maybe that's the quiet truth of children who are tired of existing. It strips childhood down to its essentials. It removes the performance, the illusion. It asks adults to rebuild not a perfect childhood, but a true one. A childhood built on what genuinely nourishes a young soul: safety, connection, permission to be imperfect. So if there's a child in your life right now where even simple things feel hard, where each day blurs into the next, I want you to remember this. They are not behind. They're not broken. They're simply being called to be seen, truly seen. Their tiredness is not a flaw. It's a signal. It's pointing back towards something they need. Maybe it's your presence. Maybe it's your honesty. Maybe it's permission to stop pretending everything is fine. And when that reconnection begins, even in the smallest way, their world starts to look a little different. Colors feel warmer. Laughter returns. tentatively at first. They start to believe again, not because everything's fixed, but because someone finally listened. And that listening, that quiet validation, is where real healing begins. The truth is, there will always be hard days, moments where the weight returns, but now they'll have something they didn't before, the knowledge that they're not alone in it. They'll recognize their tiredness not as failure, but as a signal, a reminder that they are someone who feels deeply, who needs deeply, who deserves deeply. And that's something to protect, because maybe a child being tired of existing doesn't mean they failed at childhood. Maybe it means they finally encountered an adult who paused long enough to realize that childhood deserves to be lived safely, not just endured. And that pause, that breath, that gentle awareness, that might just be the beginning of everything they've been waiting for. If this changed how you see an exhausted child, leave a comment. Tell me which part hit hardest. Subscribe if you believe tired children need love, not lectures only. People who think kids these days are too soft will scroll past. Let's build a community that protects childhood. Because these children, they're not the problem. They never were. And with the right support, they're going to be okay.